Hello, Exiles. This is Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and today I want to talk about whether Ritual was the peak of Path of Exile and what happened to make Opinion of Ultimatum fall so low. I want to talk about a couple of different topics, specifically early progress and progress for casual players, harvest crafting for late game goals, and having many nerfs without a lot of meaningful buffs. Before we get into that, last league I was going to make a video specifically talking about why I thought that the Echoes of the Atlas expansion and Ritual League by kind of association there was the best league we've ever had, and Path of Exile was in its best state. But unfortunately, a few things happened that kind of gated some of the best parts behind either long and difficult processes or nerfed them so completely that it made it almost impossible to enjoy the same aspects. One example of that I'm going to talk about is the early progress and progress for casual players. So there's a couple of things, and specifically the most prominent thing is Master Missions. Master Missions got a massive nerf in terms of their frequency that they can be gotten, and they're gated very heavily behind the Maven quest line. Now, you can go through the entire Maven quest line and return the Atlas to its previous glory, but this takes an enormous amount of time and effort, especially for casual players that only play like maybe a dozen hours a week or possibly even less. This is going to be something that may not even be achievable in a single league for a lot of these players. So these kinds of things are going to make getting into the Atlas and enjoying it a lot less fun. You still get your daily master missions, which is fine, but you're not going to have a good stockpile of them. And some of the new, more interesting things from the Ultimatum patch were that you can actually engage with these master missions, and they've kind of buffed up some of the ways they work. The temples are a little bit better, betrayal's a little bit more interesting, and maybe even a little bit more diverse. You might actually want to kill Katarina now. So there's a lot of different options there, and unfortunately, it's difficult to engage with. They've also kind of changed around beast crafting, which would be really cool. Like they changed the harvest influence craft to be a beast craft, but you're getting less beasts. And once again, you have to go ahead and get through a lot of the Maven quest line in order to get the beasts that you're going to need. I find myself having a lot less beasts in general and not being able to go to the menagerie to get the beast crafts as often. I do get some really cool ones when I do get them, and I sell them a lot of times because I don't like to do a lot of beast crafting myself. But unfortunately, all of these cool new mechanics that they put in are possibly unattainable for your average player, which makes the game a little less fun, and it makes getting to that end game less fun, because before you got so many master missions, you could slap them on constantly and have a little bit of a mini game going on, whether it be building your temple or doing your betrayal board while you were progressing, adding another layer of depth to the whole process, which could be much more engaging. Unfortunately, I feel like early game progress and progress for your average player has decreased drastically just from that one change, despite I think having a more engaging endgame because of the Echoes of the Atlas overall. I feel like had the Masters stayed in their previous state, we would have had possibly the most engaging endgame of all time, between finding all your watchstones, doing all your Maven quests, and of course doing the master missions as kind of a nice little side diversion. Next, I want to talk about harvest crafting for late game goals. So with the harvest nerfs, I personally have gotten exactly one tier 4 beast. I've gotten one Exalt option, I've gotten 0-6 link options, and I've gotten a bunch of 5 link options. I get a lot of like the reroll chaos ones, which are great. You know, rerolling life on jewels and all that kind of stuff is really nice. Still get some decent stuff, but before you were reliably from Harvest getting a lot of these Exalt slams from Harvest. And what that did was it allowed you to have a goal, even in solo self-found. You would get like a good item with a couple of good stats on it, and your goal would be to gradually refine it and try to make a semi-perfect item. And it might take quite a while if you're not engaging in the TFT Discord and buying harvest crafts. If you're doing it yourself, this is like a nice process with a clear endgame goal in mind. You wanted to make a perfect item, and you had a step-by-step process that you could deterministically get if you put in enough time and effort. That's been taken away. Right now, there's no way to individually, and it's even difficult to get certain, because of these crafts are so rare, even buying them from other players has been nerfed into the ground. Certain crafts were not found within the first few days, or were very rarely found amongst the community that trades harvest crafts, and so people weren't able to get these. There are other ways to deterministically craft gear, and those are very powerful, but as far as something that you could individually count on, harvest crafting was fantastic, and having that endgame goal for your character, something to really shoot for, made every single map you did and every single Zana mission specifically much more appealing, which goes back to the master missions. It just ties together. You had more Zana missions, you were looking for those harvests, you really wanted to get the harvest missions, do your harvest, get your Exalt slams, and hope you get the right one so you can work towards your endgame goals and your endgame items. And I thought that was really engaging, and I thought, even though the idea of Path of Exile is, unless you're trading and playing all the time, you're not going to get perfect items. But being able to maybe get one or two close to perfect items by yourself as like a long-term endgame goal, I think was not a bad thing. The fact that this became so difficult and possibly impossible, especially over the course of one league, maybe if you're playing standard, you can get enough harvest crafts over the course of a year to make a perfect item or two if you're just playing solo self-bound standard. In the permanent leagues, it's possible, but in the short leagues, it's just not attainable anymore, and unfortunately, that has kind of gone to the wayside. Lastly, I want to talk about many nerfs without any meaningful buffs. So we saw nerfs to all the blade skills, basically. We had Blade Vortex, Blade Fall, Blade Blast. We saw Toxic Rain get an increased AoE, which actually decreases its single target damage. And there are workarounds for this. Toxic Rain is still extremely strong. I played it a couple of times now in this league. Still feels very, very good, particularly to level with. I haven't played it super far into the end game, but Toxic Rain still feels good. But yeah, the nerfs overall, we lowered the power levels of ascendancies and skills pretty significantly. I think the only major buff for ascendancies was Berserker, if I recall. And what I think they should have done, they need to bring some of these other underused skills into line. We do have good build diversity. I feel like both the ascendancies and skills that are being used are more diverse than ever, and that's a good thing. But the methods that are being used are pretty much the same. It's like cast on crit, it's like Indigon, it's like we're finding ways to abuse skills using these exact same methods over and over again. So it looks like the skill diversity is very high, but in reality it's much lower than you would think. So what could we do to fix this? Maybe new threshold jewels would be really good. I think things like Rain of Arrows or Firestorm might benefit. One of the things we could do for Firestorm, add a threshold jewel that gets rid of the initial impact, increases the frequency of hits, and will allow you to cast up to 5 of them at a time. 5 of them so we can do Unleash builds. Unleash Firestorm would be awesome, but right now can't really invest in Unleash to get the maximum seals with Firestorm because you can only have 3 of them running at any given time. Same thing with like a really fast cast speed or even a cast on crit Firestorm. I guess unless you're just scaling the initial hits over and over again, but if you want to get like a nice create a field of rain of fire and do damage over time to your enemies, that's not really an option with the skill. A threshold jewel for that would be really cool. Threshold jewels for like Rain of Arrows would be nice. I'd like to be able to play Rain of Arrows. I think it's pretty strong, but not like super strong endgame without crazy gear. That would be really cool to have something that changes the mechanics of that. I hadn't really thought of how, but we could change some things with Spark. Spark doesn't really work in open maps. I tried playing a little Spark recently. Maybe increase the baseline projectile speed or kind of change the mechanics a little bit. There's a lot of things we could do to bring other skills up to the level. If you're going to do nerfs to this degree, it would be best, in my opinion, to throw people some bones. Give them other things to play with. A lot of the reasons people play skills is because they are the strongest or they like the particular playstyle. Bring other playstyles into the meta. Allow other people to explore these new skills and enjoy them. And that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe to see new Path of Exile content every week, multiple times. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time. Bye.